Today, I want to talk about three new Freddie Mac guidelines. Freddie does not require them to go into effect until note dates of November 8th, 2024, but they have encouraged lenders to adopt these new guidelines immediately. Especially since this is a recent release, it's important for all loan officers to be aware of these changes and to find out how your company or companies who you're brokering or corresponding your loans to are going to deal with them, if they're going to make changes now or if they're going to wait until November 8th. The first area regards non-arm's length employment, which is working for a family member or somebody else who is involved in the transaction, such as the realtor or the seller. This question as to whether or not there is or is not arm's length employment has always been on the IRLA /1003. And when I say at least, I mean since the change to the new IRLA went into effect several years ago. There are questions that are going to be asked in underwriting about this topic that are not on the IRLA. They've always been something underwriters are going to consider. Now, those two areas are, does the borrower have any kind of an ownership interest in the entity? So if the borrower, say, owns 15% of the entity, they're not technically self-employed, they haven't met the 25% ownership threshold to be self-employed. However, an underwriter might want to scrutinize the situation further if the borrower does own a portion of the company. They're going to, of course, have the concern. They're going to want to be positive that the data they receive from the company regarding the borrower's length of employment and their income levels and the way that their income is denominated. And when I say denominated, I mean, are they salary, are they hourly, are they bonus, etc. They're going to want to make sure that those factors are true and accurate. And the other place where there's been scrutiny in the past has been on pay raises. So if there's been a large recent pay raise, the underwriter is always going to want to be concerned, or has been concerned, that is it a real raise? So is this something that the business can support long-term, that it's intended to be in place long-term? Or is this a matter of someone trying to help the borrower get this transaction go through by giving them a raise that's going to be repealed as soon as the transaction closes? And it's within this last point that these new Freddie Mac guidelines are potentially going to cause a lot of trouble, at least in the short term, until people become aware of it. So Freddie has always wanted 1 year of tax returns to be pulled to make sure that the income that the borrower claims to be receiving is in fact the income that they've been getting. What has happened, though, in this new guideline is that it seems to say that if the income on the prior year's tax return does not match the current income, that the lender can only use the income from the tax return of the prior year. So effectively, that means that any raises that went into effect. So if there was a raise that, say, went into effect January 1st, and if you're now looking to close anytime later in the year in 2024, or the same situation in any subsequent years, you are not allowed to use that income, no matter how legitimate it is, no matter how much scrutiny your underwriting department may give the current income level, and even though they may be totally happy with it, the guideline seems to say that you can only use the income that shows on the prior year's tax return. Now, the guideline is new. Possibly there'll be some updated guidance or Q&A from Freddie Mac, and we're in the situation now where one underwriter will call Freddie Mac and get one answer, and some other company's underwriter will call Freddie Mac and get a different answer. The way it always is in the mortgage business, there's almost hand-to-hand combat on every file. But you should be aware right now that it's possible that you will be limited where there is non-arm's length employment to be limited to just the amount that was showed on the prior year's tax return. There's two more areas I want to go over with you. One of them I think is reasonably logical, but it states that if the borrower has been self-employed and they've changed their entity, which often happens with a newer business. Someone starts off as a sole proprietor on Schedule C, and then as they become a little more successful, they could switch over to an entity that gives them more legal protections, such as an S corporation, an LLC. It doesn't have to be that way, though. Sometimes for tax reasons, people that are well established, they may switch from a C corporation to an S corporation or vice versa. And what Freddie Mac has now said is that in order to consider that it's the same corporation over a time period, that there cannot have been any change in ownership percentage. So this is normally going to come up when you're looking to be able to qualify off of 1 year of tax returns when the entity's been in existence for at least 5 years. So now you want to be careful that if there has been that change in entity formation, that along the way, there wasn't any change at all in your applicant's ownership percentage. Now, the final guideline change that I want to go over with you today, I've seen debates on this through the years. It relates to when you have a borrower who has been self-employed for less than 2 years, but they are in the same field. It's between 1 and 2 years of self-employment, but they have over a 2-year history of working in the same field. So they've been a plumber, they've worked for somebody else for 10 years, and now they've gone off on their own. They're going to run their own plumbing company. It's been less than 2 years, but you still want to be able to qualify them. And you've, for a period now, you've always been able to combine the time that they were an employee with the time that they've been self-employed to meet that 2-year history. Typically, if they have at least 1 full year of self-employment on a tax return. What has happened with this change is that Freddie Mac has said that if they were making less money when they were working for someone else than they are making now, that you must qualify them off of that lower amount of money. So if they were on a, whatever it was, steady hourly, or if they were somehow salaried, not usually a plumber would be, but maybe they were in a management position at a plumbing company, they were on a salary, they made $80,000, and now they have a tax return that shows they have a full year as a plumber in a plumbing business, and they made $140,000. You can only use $80,000 to qualify them if they don't have the 2 full years of self-employment. Now, I've seen some discussions on this before. 95% of the people did not follow that rule. They would be willing to use usually the higher self-employment income, maybe some sort of an average between what they had made as a salary or as an hourly employee working for someone else with the current self-employment, but almost never were people insisting on using the prior lower wage earner amount of income. So again, this is an issue that could possibly get pushback from lenders. I want you, though, now to be very careful about it, because you may have a file in progress now or about to become in progress. And if your lender has adopted this guideline the way it reads, you could end up getting denied in underwriting, even in pre-closing QC. So if you are struggling, you're newer, or if you're a manager or owner where you're having newer mortgage loan originators and they're struggling with guidelines, struggling to structure their loans, you're having loans go into underwriting that are getting denied, I do have a program to help your folks. The program is available at complete1003.com. You can also email me, Alan, ALAN, at complete1003.com. I'm focusing more on the guidelines that I call could be deal savers, which is ways that a loan officer could realize that a loan could be structured and closed properly, and deal killers. And these were some of the good examples today of what could be deal killers. They're guidelines that aren't logical. If you're not thinking about that these guidelines are there, or you're not aware they're there, you could easily, even an experienced loan officer could easily send one of these files into underwriting and have it fall out. So what I'm trying to do in my program is, yes, teach guidelines, teach somebody where they could find a way to structure a loan, and teach someone where the pitfall could be to have the loan blow up on them. But most importantly, I'm trying to teach the newer person how to think, how to be aware that there's the possibility that they've got an area in a loan that could cause a problem when it gets into underwriting, or the loan could be structured. And I'll be covering some of those topics in future lives, future videos, ways to structure loans that on first glance might not seem that they're doable. But again, I'm really just trying to teach you how to think so that every loan that you can make, you will make, and every loan that you send into underwriting will close one or two touches, have almost everything in there, avoid all the stress and the aggravation for you and everybody else in the transaction, and help you build a very satisfied customer and referral base. All right, well, that's it for today's video.